He abandoned his sick daughter in the mountains years later. Her return destroyed him. My name is Dr. Emma Hartley. I'm a pediatric oncologist at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and I specialize in treating kids with the same rare leukemia that nearly killed me when I was 7 years old. Most people who hear my story call it inspirational, a tale of survival, resilience, and triumph over adversity. What they don't know is the full truth. They don't know that my father drove me to a remote mountain cabin when I was 7 years old, told me he was going to get supplies, and never came back. They don't know he left me there to die because my medical bills were destroying his comfortable life. They don't know that I spent 3 days alone in that cabin, sick and terrified, before a hiker found me and saved my life. And they definitely don't know what I did when I found my father 25 years later, living his perfect life with a new family, pretending I never existed. This is the story of what happens when a father chooses convenience over conscience, and what happens when that choice comes back to haunt him. I'll start at the beginning, with the memories I've spent decades trying to process. My mother died when I was 5. Cancer. It was fast and brutal. One day she was fine, the next she was sick. 6 months later she was gone. My father, Richard Hartley, was devastated, or so I thought. 2 years later, when I was 7, I got sick too. Different cancer, same terrible word. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. The doctors said I needed aggressive chemotherapy, possibly a bone marrow transplant, months of treatment. My father was a middle manager at a tech company. Good job, decent salary, but not wealthy. My mother's cancer had drained our savings. Insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. We were still paying off her medical debt. And now I was sick too. I remember the night everything changed. I was in the hospital, hooked up to IVs, bald from chemotherapy, so weak I could barely sit up. My father came to visit, but instead of sitting with me, he stood by the window, staring out at the parking lot. "Daddy," I said. My voice was small, hoarse from vomiting. He didn't turn around. "Emma, we need to talk about something." "Okay." "The doctors say you need more treatment, a lot more, months, maybe a year, and it's very expensive." "I'm sorry, Daddy." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes terrified me. Not love, not compassion, something cold and calculating. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. You didn't choose to be sick, but we have to make some hard choices." "What choices?" "Adult choices. Don't worry about it. You just focus on getting better." But I did worry, because even at 7, I understood that something was wrong. Something in how he looked at me had changed. A week later, my father checked me out of the hospital against medical advice. The doctors protested, said I needed to stay, said interrupting treatment could be fatal. "I'm taking her to a facility that specializes in childhood cancer," my father told them. "They have experimental treatments, cutting edge." It was a lie, I know that now. But the hospital staff had no authority to stop him. I was his daughter. He could take me wherever he wanted. He drove me to a cabin in the San Gabriel Mountains, about 2 hours from Los Angeles. It was remote, isolated, at the end of a dirt road where nobody went. He told me it was a special recovery place where I'd get better. The cabin was small, dusty, with minimal furniture. There was no electricity, no running water, no phone. Just a wood stove, some canned food, and a bed with thin blankets. "Daddy, where are the doctors?" I asked. "They'll come soon. They wanted you to rest first, get some fresh air." "When will they come?" "In a few days, don't worry." He stayed with me that first night, made me soup from a can, tucked me into bed, told me he loved me. The next morning, he said he needed to go back to town for supplies. "I'll be back tonight," he promised. He never came back. I waited for 3 days. The first day, I convinced myself he was just delayed. Maybe his car broke down. Maybe he was getting special medicine. He'd be back soon. The second day I started to worry. I was so sick. The chemotherapy I'd been receiving had stopped abruptly and my body was struggling. I had a fever. I was vomiting. I could barely stand. I ate some of the canned food my father had left. Crackers. Soup I couldn't heat because I didn't know how to work the wood stove. I drank water from the bottles he'd left, but there weren't many. By the third day, I knew. My father wasn't coming back. He'd left me there to die. I was 7 years old, dying of leukemia, alone in a cabin in the mountains, and my father had abandoned me. I should have died. I was supposed to die. That was his plan: leave me somewhere remote, let nature take its course, avoid the medical bills and the burden of a sick child. But I didn't die. On the third day, a hiker named James Morrison was on a rarely used trail near the cabin. He heard me crying, weak, desperate crying from a child who knew she was dying. He found me on the cabin floor, barely conscious, burning with fever. "Oh my God," he said, scooping me up. "Where are your parents?" "Daddy left," I whispered. "He said he'd come back. He didn't come back." James carried me down the mountain. He called 911. An ambulance met us at the trailhead. I was rushed to a hospital, critically ill, on the verge of organ failure. The doctors saved my life, barely. And then the questions started. Where were my parents? Who left me in that cabin? Why was a 7-year-old cancer patient abandoned in the mountains? I told them everything. My father's name, where we lived, how he'd taken me from the hospital and left me in the cabin. The police launched an investigation. They found our house empty. My father was gone, bank accounts closed, no forwarding address. He'd planned this, disappeared the same day he left me to die. For months there was a manhunt, but Richard Hartley had vanished. No trace, no leads, nothing. Eventually the case went cold, a file in a cabinet somewhere, unsolved. And I became a ward of the state, a foster kid with cancer, a child nobody wanted. I spent the next 11 years in the foster system. Some homes were okay, some were terrible. I bounced around a lot because I was difficult, meaning I had ongoing medical needs, trauma, trust issues. But I survived. The leukemia went into remission after intensive treatment that James Morrison helped fund through donations he organized. He stayed in my life, checked on me, made sure I was okay. He became the closest thing I had to family. I put myself through college on scholarships and student loans, then medical school, then residency in pediatric oncology. Because I'd survived something that should have killed me. And I wanted to help other kids survive too. I became Dr. Emma Hartley, successful physician, someone who'd overcome impossible odds. People admired me, called me inspiring. But inside, I was still that 7-year-old girl on the cabin floor, wondering why her father chose to let her die. I thought about finding him sometimes. I had resources as an adult that I didn't have as a child. I could hire investigators, search databases, track him down. But what would I say? What would I do? Confront him? Demand answers? Would that give me closure or just reopen wounds? I decided to let it go. My father had made his choice 25 years ago. He'd chosen to erase me from his life. Fine. He could stay erased from mine. That was my plan until 6 months ago, when a patient's mother changed everything. I was treating a 5-year-old girl named Sophie. Same leukemia I'd had. Her mother, Catherine, was devoted. At every appointment, holding Sophie's hand through every procedure, sleeping in her hospital room. One day, Catherine mentioned that her husband had been married before. He had a daughter from his first marriage, she said, but she died when she was young. It's still hard for him to talk about. That's why he's so protective of Sophie. He couldn't save his first daughter, but he's determined to save this one. Something in my chest tightened. His first daughter died. How? Cancer, same as Sophie. Can you imagine? Having 2 daughters with the same disease. It's like a nightmare. What was her name, his first daughter? Emily, I think, or Emma. He doesn't talk about her much. Too painful. Emma. My hands were shaking. Your husband's name? Richard Hartley. Why? The room spun. I excused myself, said I needed to check something, walked to my office and closed the door. Richard Hartley, father of Emma, who died of cancer 25 years ago. Except I didn't die. I survived. And my father knew it, or should have known it if he'd ever bothered to check. He was here in Los Angeles, living a new life with a new wife, a new daughter, pretending his first daughter was dead. I pulled up our hospital record system and searched for Sophie's file. There it was. Parents Richard and Catherine Hartley, address in Pasadena, father's occupation listed as senior manager at a tech firm. He was successful, comfortable, living the life he'd wanted, the life he'd tried to preserve by abandoning me. And he'd told his new family I was dead. Not missing, not estranged, dead. A clean break, no questions, no guilt. I sat in my office for an hour trying to process this, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to confront him immediately, storm into Sophie's hospital room and tell Catherine who I really was, destroy his comfortable lie. But part of me, the part that was still a doctor, still someone who cared about sick kids, knew that would hurt Sophie. A 5-year-old fighting cancer didn't need her world imploded. So I made a different plan. I would treat Sophie, save her if I could, and then when she was healthy and stable, I would reveal myself to Richard Hartley. I would show him that I hadn't died, that I'd survived despite his best efforts, that I'd become successful, accomplished, someone who mattered. And then I would destroy the perfect life he'd built on my grave. Over the next 3 months, I treated Sophie with everything I had, not because of Richard, because Sophie was an innocent kid who deserved to live. Richard never came to appointments. Catherine said he couldn't handle seeing Sophie sick, too many memories of his first daughter. What a coward. He couldn't face his current daughter's illness because it reminded him of the daughter he'd abandoned. But Catherine showed me photos, family pictures. Richard looked older, grayer, but it was definitely him, and he looked happy, content, living his life without a trace of guilt. Sophie responded well to treatment. Her cancer went into remission. By month 4, she was declared stable with an excellent prognosis. The day Sophie was discharged, I told Catherine I needed to meet with both parents to discuss long-term care and follow-up. Could you bring your husband to the appointment? I know he's been avoiding the hospital, but this is important. Catherine hesitated. I'll try. He really struggles with medical settings. I understand, but I need both parents there for this conversation. She agreed to bring him. The appointment was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. I cleared my schedule, prepared meticulously. And I waited. When Richard Hartley walked into my office, he looked nervous, uncomfortable. He'd avoided the hospital for months, avoided seeing his daughter's doctor. He had no idea that daughter's doctor was also his daughter. Catherine made introductions. Honey, this is Dr. Hartley. She's been Sophie's primary oncologist. Richard's head snapped up. Hartley, that's your name. I smiled calmly, professional. Yes, Dr. Emma Hartley, please sit down. I watched him process the name, saw the flicker of recognition, followed immediately by denial. No, it couldn't be. Emma was dead. Emma died 25 years ago in that cabin. Except I was sitting right in front of him. Dr. Hartley has been amazing, Catherine continued. She saved Sophie's life. I'm sure she did, Richard said faintly. He couldn't stop staring at me. I let the moment stretch out, let him squirm. Then I began the meeting. I wanted to discuss Sophie's long-term care plan. The prognosis is excellent, but we'll need regular monitoring. Annual checkups, blood work, watching for any signs of recurrence. We went through the medical details. I was professional, thorough, giving them the information they needed. Richard barely spoke. He kept staring at me like he was seeing a ghost, which in a way he was. Finally, Catherine excused herself to use the restroom, leaving me alone with Richard. The moment she left, Richard leaned forward. You can't be. Can't be what, Mr. Hartley? My daughter was named Emma Hartley. She died when she was 7. Did she? I met his eyes. Are you sure about that? The authorities said. There was no body, but they assumed. They assumed I died in that cabin. The cabin where you left me. The cabin you abandoned me in when I was 7 years old, dying of leukemia. Richard's face went white. Emma. Surprise, I survived. That's impossible. You were so sick, there's no way. A hiker found me, James Morrison. He carried me down the mountain, got me to a hospital, saved my life. And then I spent 11 years in foster care while you disappeared and started over. Emma, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you left a 7-year-old cancer patient alone in a cabin with no medical care? Can you explain why you told your new family I was dead instead of admitting you abandoned me? Catherine's footsteps sounded in the hallway. Richard grabbed my wrist. Please, don't tell her, don't destroy my family. I pulled my wrist away. Your family, like the family you destroyed when you left me to die. Catherine entered the room. Everything okay? Everything's fine, I said smoothly. Mr. Hartley and I were just discussing Sophie's care. I think we're all set here. You have my contact information if you need anything. I stood, ending the meeting. Richard looked panicked, but he couldn't say anything in front of Catherine. As they left, I called out, Mr. Hartley, one more thing. He turned. I'll be in touch. We have a lot to discuss about Emma, your first daughter, the one who didn't actually die. I saw Catherine's confused expression, saw Richard's panic. And I smiled. That night, Richard called my office, left desperate voicemails. Emma, please, we need to talk. Let me explain, it's not what you think. I didn't return his calls. The next day, he showed up at the hospital. Security stopped him before he could get to my office. Dr. Hartley doesn't want to see you, they told him. He left notes, emails, all of them begging me to meet with him privately, to let him explain, to not tell Catherine. I ignored all of it. For 2 weeks, I let him panic, let him imagine all the ways his life could unravel if I told the truth. Then I sent him a single text, meet me at the cabin, Saturday noon, you remember where it is. The cabin looked almost the same, abandoned, deteriorating, but still standing. The same cabin where he'd left me to die 25 years ago. I arrived early, stood in the spot where James Morrison had found me, barely alive, burning with fever, crying for a father who never came back. Richard's car pulled up at noon. He got out slowly, looking around nervously. Emma. Hello, Richard. Or should I call you Dad, although you gave up that title when you left me here. I can explain. I don't want explanations. I want you to listen. He nodded, looking miserable. I spent 3 days here, alone, dying. I was 7 years old and I knew you weren't coming back. I knew you'd left me here to die. Do you know what that does to a child? Emma, I was desperate. Your mother's medical bills had destroyed us. Then you got sick too. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't face losing another person, drowning in more debt. So you killed me instead. I didn't kill you. You tried. You left me here without medical care, knowing I'd die within days. The only reason I survived is because a stranger cared more about my life than you did. Richard was crying. I'm sorry, I was weak. I was overwhelmed. I made a terrible mistake. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. This was attempted murder. I convinced myself you'd already be dead by the time anyone found you, that it would look like I'd brought you here for peace and then stepped away for a moment and you just passed naturally. But I didn't pass naturally. I suffered, and then I survived. and spent 11 years in foster care, being bounced between homes, dealing with trauma and medical issues while you were rebuilding your life. I thought you were dead, I really thought. You never checked. In 25 years, you never once tried to find out what actually happened to me. You just moved on. New city, new job, new family, new daughter. Did you tell Sophie about me? Does she know she has a sister? I told Catherine you died. It seemed easier than explaining. Explaining that you left me in a cabin to die. Yeah, that would be hard to explain. Much easier to just say I died and play the grieving father. What do you want from me, Emma? What do I want? I laughed bitterly. I want my childhood back. I want a father who didn't choose his comfort over my life. I want to not have spent 11 years wondering what I did wrong, why I wasn't worth saving. But I can't have any of that, so I'll settle for something else. What? I want you to tell Catherine the truth. Everything. About abandoning me, about lying about my death, about building your new family on that lie. Emma, please, that will destroy my marriage. Sophie will hate me. Good, maybe Sophie should know what kind of father she has. Maybe Catherine should know who she married. Sophie is 5 years old. She's been through so much already. This will traumatize her. And I was 7 when you traumatized me, but you didn't care about that. I'm asking you, begging you, don't do this. Not for me, for Sophie. She's innocent. She doesn't deserve to have her family destroyed. Neither did I. Richard fell to his knees, actually dropped to his knees in the dirt. Emma, please, I'll do anything. I'll pay you. I'll set up a trust fund. I'll compensate you for all the years I wasn't there. Just don't tell Catherine, don't hurt Sophie. I looked down at him. This pathetic man who'd been willing to let his daughter die to avoid inconvenience, who'd spent 25 years living comfortably while I struggled. And I realized something. Destroying his life wouldn't heal mine. Forcing him to confess wouldn't give me back my childhood, wouldn't undo the trauma, wouldn't make Catherine and Sophie's lives better. It would just spread the pain. I'm not going to tell Catherine, I said finally. Richard looked up, hope flooding his face. Thank you so much, I promise I'll. I'm not done. I'm not going to tell Catherine because Sophie doesn't deserve to find out her father is a monster, because Catherine doesn't deserve to have her marriage destroyed, because being vindictive doesn't actually fix anything. Then what do you want? I want you to live with it. Every day for the rest of your life, I want you to remember what you did. I want you to look at Sophie and remember that you abandoned your first daughter in this cabin. I want you to feel guilt every single day. I do feel guilty. You feel scared of being caught. That's different. But now you'll really feel it, because you'll know I'm out there, I'm alive. I survived despite your best efforts. And I became successful, accomplished, someone who saves lives, including your current daughter's life. And you'll have to live knowing that the daughter you tried to kill is the doctor who saved the daughter you love. Richard was sobbing now. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Your apology means nothing. You're sorry you got caught, not sorry for what you did. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to be a better father to Sophie than you ever were to me. You're going to support her, love her, be there for her. You're going to go to every doctor's appointment, even though hospitals make you uncomfortable. You're going to face your fear and be present for your daughter. I will, I promise. And you're going to donate to childhood cancer research, a significant amount, anonymously, every year. As long as you live. How much? Whatever would have been my inheritance. Whatever you would have left me if you'd been a real father, put it toward helping other kids survive. Okay, yes, I'll do it. And if you ever tell anyone about this conversation, if Catherine ever finds out from you, then I'll go public. I'll tell your whole story. I'll destroy everything. Understand? I understand. Good, now get out of here. Go home to your family. And spend the rest of your life being grateful that I'm a better person than you are. Richard stumbled to his car and drove away. I stood in the cabin for a long time after he left, thinking about the 7-year-old girl who'd almost died here, thinking about the choices we make and the consequences we live with. I'd spent 25 years wanting revenge, wanting to make my father suffer the way he'd made me suffer. But actually facing him, actually having the power to destroy him, I realized something. Revenge wouldn't heal me. It would just create more pain. 6 months have passed since that meeting. Richard kept his word. I checked. He set up an anonymous fund that donates $250,000 annually to pediatric cancer research. He attends Sophie's checkups now. Catherine told me he's finally learning to face his fears about hospitals. Sophie is doing well. Healthy, happy, cancer-free. She'll never know that her sister, her half-sister who died, was actually the doctor who saved her life. And Richard has to live with that knowledge every single day. Is that justice? I don't know. Maybe there's no such thing as justice for what he did. Maybe some wrongs are too big to ever be made right. But I do know this. I'm not going to let his choices define my life anymore. I'm not going to let him have that power over me. I survived, despite him, despite the odds, despite everything. I built a life, a career. I help kids who are going through what I went through. That's my victory. Not destroying him, but becoming someone who saves others. Last week, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Yema. I know you said my apology means nothing, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being weak. I'm sorry for choosing myself over you. I'm sorry for every day you suffered because of my cowardice. You're right, I can never make this right. I can never undo what I did. But I want you to know that not a day goes by that I don't think about that cabin, about the choice I made, about the daughter I abandoned. You said I feel scared of being caught rather than genuinely sorry. You're probably right, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be better, to be the father to Sophie that I should have been to you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not asking for it, but I want you to know you were right about me, and you were strong enough to choose mercy when you could have chosen revenge. That makes you better than I ever was. Thank you for saving Sophie. Thank you for not telling her the truth. And thank you for surviving. Richard. I burned the letter after I read it. Not out of anger, out of closure. That chapter of my life is over. Richard Hartley is nothing to me now. Not a father, not a villain, just a stranger who made terrible choices 25 years ago. I'm not defined by what he did to me. I'm defined by what I did for myself, by surviving, by thriving, by choosing to save lives instead of taking revenge. I'm writing this from my office at Children's Hospital. Outside my window, I can see families in the garden, parents with bald kids, making memories, choosing hope even in the darkest times. That's what good parents do. They choose their kids, no matter how hard it gets, no matter the cost. My father didn't choose me, but I chose to survive anyway, chose to become someone who makes sure other kids survive too. Am I angry? Sometimes. Am I hurt? Always. Do I wish my father had been different? Every day. But I don't waste time on what-ifs anymore. I focus on what is. I'm Dr. Emma Hartley. I was abandoned as a child, but I wasn't abandoned by everyone. James Morrison, the hiker who saved me, stayed in my life, became my guardian angel, my mentor, my friend. He's the one who deserves the title father, not the man who left me to die. And I have a family now, not biological but chosen, colleagues who respect me, patients who trust me, friends who love me. That's what I built from the ashes of what Richard Hartley tried to destroy. People ask me sometimes if I regret not exposing Richard, if I wish I'd destroyed his life the way he tried to destroy mine. The answer is no. Because I learned something in that cabin 25 years ago, something that shaped everything I became. Survival is the best revenge. Not just staying alive, truly surviving, building a life, finding purpose, becoming someone who matters. Richard Hartley tried to erase me. He failed. I'm not erased. I'm not forgotten. I'm not dead. I'm right here, successful, strong, saving lives every day. And he has to live knowing that the daughter he abandoned became someone extraordinary, that the sick little girl he left in a cabin grew up to be the doctor who saved his other daughter. That's my revenge. Not destruction, creation. I created a life worth living from the nothing he left me with. And every day I wake up healthy, accomplished, surrounded by people who value me. That's another day I win. 25 years ago, Richard Hartley left me in a cabin and drove away, believing he'd solved his problem. But he didn't solve anything. He just created a different problem. He created me, the daughter who survived, who thrived, who became everything he didn't believe I could be. And now he has to live with that. Every time he looks at Sophie, every time he writes a check to cancer research, every time he thinks about that cabin. He knows I'm out there, living my life, saving children, being successful. And he knows he gave that all up. He could have had a daughter who became a doctor, a daughter who was brilliant and strong and capable of greatness. Instead, he has a stranger he abandoned, and a secret he can never share. That's his prison, and he built it himself. And that brings us to the end of Emma's story, a tale not of revenge taken, but of revenge unnecessary. Her journey reminds us that survival itself can be the greatest form of victory, that some wrongs can never be made right, but they don't have to define who we become, and that choosing mercy doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let someone else's cruelty turn you cruel in return. What would you have done in Emma's position? Should she have exposed Richard? Is choosing mercy weakness or strength? And how do we heal from betrayals that can never truly be repaired? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more stories about survival, strength, and choosing who we become despite what was done to us. Thank you for listening. Until next time, remember, the best revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming so successful that your betrayer has to watch you thrive. And sometimes the strongest choice is letting someone live with their guilt instead of punishing them for it.